I arrived at my daughter's estate without any notice. What I saw there made my blood turn to ice. She was stretched out on the floor near the entrance, wearing ripped, dirty clothes. Her husband calmly rubbed his shoes on her body, then faced his guests with a grin. He said she was just their crazy house servant. My daughter didn't move or speak. She simply lay there, breathing. I didn't shout. I didn't weep. I stepped forward once and spoke 5 words. The entire room fell silent. That night, when I entered that house, I had never felt so completely alone in my entire life. The taxi driver refused to go any closer. He shut off the engine about 300 yards from the mansion and looked at me through the rearview mirror. He said he couldn't continue because the owner didn't allow unknown vehicles near the gate. He told me the last time he came there, security cut his tires. I paid him and stepped out onto the Connecticut road. The October wind cut through my coat, carrying the scent of smoke and dead leaves. The mansion stood ahead on a hill. White columns, wrought iron gates, the kind of wealth people think guarantees happiness. I hadn't heard from my daughter for 18 months. Her last message was only 2 words: "Dad, help." I lifted my bag and walked up the driveway. The security booth was empty. I pressed the buzzer. No response. When I pushed the small side gate, it opened. Music and laughter drifted from inside. There was a party happening. I rang the front bell twice. No one answered, so I walked around to a service entrance and slipped inside. The narrow hallway smelled of cleaning chemicals and led me to the main foyer. That's where I saw her. Rebecca was lying on the floor by the front door, right on the welcome mat. She was wearing a faded gray shirt and torn sweatpants. Her hair was greasy and matted. Her eyes stared into nothing. Guests in formal clothes stepped around her as if she were furniture. Then a man in a perfectly fitted suit walked out from the salon. Derek, my son-in-law. He walked toward the door without looking down, stepped on Rebecca's stomach, and wiped his shoes on her back, one shoe, then the other, as if she were a rug. He smiled at the guests and announced that she was their unstable maid and told them not to worry. He said she wasn't right in the head, but that they looked after her as an act of charity. Some people laughed. Others pretended to feel sorry. No one stopped him. I stood frozen at the hallway entrance. Everything in the world narrowed to that one sight. My daughter on the floor, polished shoes on her back, laughter echoing like glass shattering. I stepped forward. A champagne glass fell and broke against the marble. Everyone turned. A gray-haired man in a navy suit stood in the salon doorway, staring at me as if he had seen a ghost. Champagne pooled at his feet, but he didn't notice. I recognized him immediately. William Patterson. 20 years earlier, I had kept him alive for 4 hours on an operating table, holding his intestines in my hands. He had sworn he would repay me someday. He whispered my name. Derek snapped his head toward me when he heard it. For a brief second, something sharp and cold passed through his eyes. Then he smiled broadly and called me Dad. He stepped off Rebecca and moved toward me with open arms, acting surprised and asking why I hadn't called first. I didn't hug him. I looked past him at my daughter on the floor. Rebecca slowly turned her head. Her lips moved as she barely whispered my name. She asked if I was alive. Derek motioned toward the hallway and said we should talk privately in his study. 2 guards appeared behind me, blocking the way out. I knew I could fight, or I could find the truth. I went with him. His study was filled with dark wood and leather, designed to intimidate. The door clicked shut behind us. Shelves of perfect, unread books lined the walls. He poured himself a drink and didn't offer me one. He told me to sit. I stayed standing. He shrugged and sat down, saying he understood how hard it was to see Rebecca like that, but that there was a lot I didn't understand. I told him to explain. He opened a folder filled with medical records and a psychiatrist's signature. He said she had schizoaffective disorder and drug-induced psychosis, claiming she believed he was poisoning her food. He called it classic paranoia. I looked at the photos and noticed the pupils were wrong, too dilated for cocaine. The timeline didn't match drug psychosis. He kept talking about specialists from Switzerland and Johns Hopkins, all saying the same thing, that it was irreversible. He showed prescriptions and treatment plans that looked official and convincing to anyone who wasn't a doctor. He said he could have had her committed, but chose to keep her at home because he loved her, even though it cost him $30,000 a month. I told him I wanted to see her. He said that wasn't wise because she was unstable. I told him I was a surgeon and demanded to see my daughter. His smile tightened, something dark flashing briefly before disappearing. He said he understood my concern and made me an offer. He pulled out a checkbook and offered me $500,000 a year to go home and let him handle Rebecca's care. I told him he was trying to buy me. He said he was offering peace and privacy. Then his voice hardened. He accused me of being absent for 18 months, of being relieved when she stopped calling. He said while I moved on, he stayed with her through her screams and confusion. Then he mentioned my wife, Margaret, talking casually about how afraid she had been of me. Before I realized it, my fist struck his jaw. He crashed into the desk as papers flew and the glass shattered. Guards rushed in and twisted my arms behind me. I didn't resist. Derek stood up slowly, blood on his lip, smiling. He said my anger proved his point. He picked up his phone and said he could call the police for assault and have me arrested. He added that Rebecca would be committed by morning and locked away for years. He gave me a choice: leave and forget this ever happened, or watch my daughter disappear forever. He leaned close and said Rebecca married him because he reminded her of me, that she felt safe because of what I taught her about love and control. He said I was just the honest version of who he had been. They dragged me out. Rebecca was gone. The party continued as if nothing had happened. Outside, my hands shook as I tasted blood. My phone buzzed. A message from William Patterson told me to meet him on River Street at midnight, alone. William's house was an old Victorian squeezed between modern buildings. I opened the door before I knocked. Inside, a fire burned. He reminded me how I had saved his life and said the time had come to repay that debt. He explained Derek's past, his other wives, the money, the lies, and the drugs. He told me about confessions made by Derek's dying father and how my daughter had been chosen because she already believed control was love. I admitted the truth about my own life, about how I controlled my wife for 30 years and called it protection, about her diaries filled with fear and misery. I admitted I taught my daughter the same lesson. William said we were both responsible, but that we could still save her. He told me about a housekeeper named Helen who had seen everything and wanted to help. That night, I met Helen at a nearly empty market. She told me everything she had witnessed over 5 years, the drugs, the pattern, the deaths. She explained what Derek was giving Rebecca. I realized I could reverse it if I reached her in time. Helen gave me a window, a door, and directions. At 2 a.m., I entered the mansion through the service entrance. Rebecca's room was bare and cold. I examined her, saw the injection marks, and recognized the drugs immediately. This wasn't just abuse, it was erasure. I administered the antidote and waited. Minute by minute, she came back. She told me Derek had made her believe I was dead. I told her the truth and helped her up. As we tried to leave, Derek appeared, calm and waiting. He said everything was recorded and that I would go to prison. I told him the blood sample was already at the state lab. Before he could respond, the police arrived, and with the district attorney, evidence had been reopened. Derek was arrested. Rebecca declared she was divorcing him and would testify. At the hospital, doctors said another week would have caused permanent damage.
I stayed beside her bed and finally told her the truth about her mother and about myself. Rebecca listened and told me she didn't know if she could forgive me, but she wanted to try. She said she would live her own life and make her own choices. I agreed and promised not to control her again. Months later, Derek was convicted. His victims testified. Rebecca told her story. The jury found him guilty on all counts. His money was taken, and he was sent to prison. A year later, I stood in Rebecca's small apartment, now her own. She cooked dinner. We talked. I listened. When I left, she hugged me and thanked me for changing. Now, at 72, I look back and understand the truth. Control is not love. Love is freedom. This story is shared through ZERIX Truth as a warning. Patterns repeat until